You're listening to Season 2 of the Mies podcast. I'm your host, Josh Sharkey, the founder and CEO of Mies, a culinary operating system for food professionals. On the show, we're going to talk to high performers in the food business, everything from chefs to CEOs, technologists, writers, investors, and more, about how they innovate and operate and how they consistently execute at a high level, day after day. And I would really love it if you could drop us a 5-star review anywhere that you listen to your podcast. That could be Apple, that could be Spotify, could be Google. I'm not picky. Anywhere works, but I really appreciate the support. And as always, I hope you enjoy the show. With every stroke of the pencil, I'm giving you folks a glimpse into my experiences. You could trace. Good morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are, everyone. Excited about today's guest. We've known each other for, oh my gosh, over a decade and a half, I think. She is a coffee expert, among many other things. I met her when she was running a coffee company that she had called Guerrilla Coffee back in the day. If you've never heard of it, it was incredible coffee, really, really strong, bold stuff. We used it, actually, we would make like a cold brew concentrate and use it to make cold brew milkshakes at my old restaurant bar. And we got to know each other over the years because we were neighbors. My restaurant was next to her coffee shop, and so obviously drank a lot of coffee there. Darleen is a world of information, not only as it relates to coffee and the whole coffee world and agriculture, also in marketing and branding, and she does an incredible job of building really beautiful and really smart brands that people connect with. So we talk both today about coffee and the agriculture of coffee and how it gets to our cup from the farm and everything along the way, and how coffee gets graded. And generally speaking, we just try to go as deep as we can on the agriculture of coffee and what makes a great cup of coffee. And then we spend some time just building brands and how to go from 0 to 1 with any brand, which is a lot of what she does now with her new company, where she's sort of consulting on helping specifically coffee companies, but really applies to any company, how to build a brand, how to grow a brand, how to iterate on it, and things like that. So it was great just to catch up with Darleen. It's been a long time, and I think you'll really enjoy learning about, well, just the origin of where your coffee comes from, among many other things. So, as always, I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. I don't know a lot about Super Crown, so I think maybe for everybody listening, and then also for me, I know you from Guerrilla Coffee.
Yeah.
That's what I experienced. But maybe we could just sort of tie up your background, because I know from Guerrilla Coffee, and then after that you've done a bunch of other stuff, and now I would love to hear what you're doing today, because it seems like you're doing a bunch of stuff. So you opened Guerrilla Coffee in what year was that?
Are we recording? Is this part of the podcast?
It's all kind of.
It all is. Oh, okay. Then you just
welcome to the show.
Awesome. I kind of love that. So, I'll just maybe I'll give you like my background, because it kind of makes sense of where I am now, I guess. I moved to New York in '94. I was an English and art history major, and I went to a head honor, and the first job I got was at an ad agency, on Fifth Avenue. And yeah, I was like, sure, whatever. Yeah, and I kind of liked it. It was like, the agency I worked for was like a kind of a boutique part of a huge agency, but it was sort of the small feel inside of something pretty big. But I ended up like being an assistant radio buyer, and then I was an account executive. So, and then I was like, this is like, I don't want to be this. Like I saw, it was like such stereotypical New York agency folks of like super older, super unhealthy, smoking in their office, and I was just like, I don't want to be that. They're, a couple of the people that I was working for, were just single and seemed miserable. And I'm like, that's just like, I don't know. When you're like, you don't know what you want to do when you grow up. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm 23 and that doesn't seem to be the right direction for me. So, I don't know, I did that for a couple of years though. And then I went to the first internet agency.
What does that mean? Internet agency?
I don't know. Do you know Scott Heiferman? So he started this place called iTraffic that ended up being bought by agency.com. And then he started Meetup and sold it. I don't even know what he's up to right now, but really smart, like just totally got the internet, and I really wanted to work for him. I interviewed for, I think, several jobs, different jobs that they keep posting. And he's like, you keep coming in we keep not hiring and you keep coming in for different jobs. But I was like, I really want to work here. Like everyone's really young and cool. And like, I love the internet and I want to be part of it and stuff. And so, but that's really where I learned how to like build out brand position and brand story and finding customers, finding qualified customers. But, we talked about mindset and all that kind of stuff because the clients we had it was Disney.com, BarnesandNoble.com,
Oh, wow.
CD Now. I don't know if you even remember CD Now.
No, I don't.
It was like where you would buy CDs online. It seems, at the time it was really cool. It's like, oh my God, they have like everything you could possibly want, on this website.
Wait, so by the way, I missed his name. I think I might have asked you a question while you said his name, but who's the guy that you mentioned?
His name is Scott, and his last name is Heiferman.
Gotcha. So he started Meetup, and then he's got all these businesses, and then you started working for him.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of where I was like, okay, cool. Like I kind of like this whole marketing thing because it was like fun. It was like a game of like, how do we drive traffic? So the name of the place was iTraffic. It was like driving traffic to the site and get people to do something. And in the end, it just became everything was about buying a ticket to the park for Disney, or with CD Now, obviously buying CDs and serving and like capturing people in a certain mindset, whatever. So I liked all of that. And then I worked at a graphic design studio called The Chopping Block, where I was the general manager. And I was working with these really talented graphic designers who they're all like Cooper Union grads.
Mm-hmm.
And I was friends with them. And I kind of was like, well, listen, you guys are not really charging enough for what you're doing. And they liked that. And it was true. And so they hired me. And then I just completely changed their business. But everything was like perfect timing. It was like, this is probably like 97, 96, 97, and there are all these like internet startups that needed everything from like a name to an identity to the website. And that was pretty much it. But like that was a lot. And they were doing a lot of these sites in Flash, which was pretty progressive at the time. Yeah. Yeah. So I really love those guys and everything. And then September 11th happened and they kind of just went back to the four owners and kind of mustered through for a few years. And then they kind of all parted ways. But, it was kind of like boom bust, I don't know I don't know where you were. Where were you at September 11th?
I was cooking in New York, in Midtown.
Oh.
I was working at a restaurant called Oceana on 54th and Madison.
Yeah. Okay.
I was living in Middle Village, Queens when it happened. I like took pictures of the second tower.
Oh shit. Yeah.
Yeah, I vividly remember that time.
Crazy. Yeah. So I was living in the East Village on 6th Street. There was a They Might Be Giants launch party that we had the night before. So we were all like out late. We're all like hungover. And I'm like, what is going on? I was talking to my mom on the phone. I was watching the Today Show. Like, who even does that anymore? I would be watching the Today Show. I was getting ready. And I'm like, Katie Kirk's talking about the towers getting hit by a plane. It's so bizarre. And so I pivoted. I was just like, okay, I was at that time, I was like, I want to do my own thing. Like working in that kind of entrepreneurial environment, like with Scott and then with these guys at the Chopping Block, they kind of fueled that entrepreneurial spirit for sure. And I was like, I can do this. I want to do this, but I want to do food. I had been a waitress in college and I don't know, and in high school, I worked at Friendly's. Yeah. I always loved restaurants. You know what I mean? I always loved food service.
Like now that you're saying all this, I have all these other questions because I didn't know this much about your background in like branding and marketing and design. And it makes so much sense when you look at the brands that you created.
Yeah, thanks.
They're such strong brands. Like it's so obvious when you walk, when you feel like, Gorilla Coffee, and if you look at the Super Crown, it's like such a strong design too.
Yeah, thanks. You too.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like I loved Bark's brand, and I love Me's too. I don't know.
I like 4-letter words.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I had a sandwich shop in between called Make as well that really loved, but I'm just a big fan,
oh my God,
fan of 4-letter words. Well, anyway, so how did you get into coffee though? Because, I have like a million questions about coffee today that maybe I'll just save some because they're maybe obvious ones, but But how did you then get into coffee?
Mm-hmm. Well, so I'm like drinking my iced coffee right now. This is how it got started. Every morning on my way to work, if I was going to one of those agencies or if I was going, Yeah, or like the design studio. I would grab a coffee on my way there, just around the corner. Oh, this is funny.
From where?
From this place called, God, it was called Atlas, and then it changed and it was called like Blue Goose. But this is funny. So, Ciao Gloria
No.
and Baked.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Renato, who was one of the founders of Baked, he was the manager at this place. And we had really similar backgrounds. He had been working at agencies, and around September 11th, he was like, I want to open a bakery, a coffee shop or a bakery, And I was like, oh, that's really cool, because I am working on a business plan right now for a coffee company. So anyways, I always stay in touch with Renato. I'm actually going to be in New York, I don't know, next week. And so I'm going to definitely go by Ciao Gloria. I hope I'm going to catch him. But anyways, his thing is blowing up right now. He's got a book out, and
Wow.
I'm really happy for him because I think he opened this one like right before COVID. I'm just like, God, that guy, like, what terrible luck, And now I'm like, oh my God, he's got like 33,000 followers on Instagram, and he's got a book out. So anyways, yeah, I'm so excited for
I
him.
don't know why I don't know more about this. I'm like looking at it right now. I'm like Googling it.
Oh, yeah, they're on Vanderbilt, right by Barclays.
Oh, gotcha. I must have moved out of there after her. Yeah, no, I definitely moved out.
I really, honestly, I think he opened up like late 2019.
Yeah. I mean, there wasn't much coffee. There was Guerrilla Coffee, and then eventually Hungry Ghost opened.
Oh, yeah. And Cafe Grumpy was like in...
Oh, yeah, that was a little bit down the way.
Right, in Williamsburg or whatever.
When you opened, there was not a lot of coffee anywhere.
Yeah. So I started, this 2001. So I just was like, well, I really want to do food. I actually thought I wanted to do hot dogs and fries,
Nice job not doing that.
I know. I kind of was like, well, I'm going to be there a lot, and I don't know if I want to like go home smelling like hot dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind going home smelling like coffee. I had like, what a weird decision, whatever. But I'm glad to have gone down the coffee path.
Both very pungent smells.
I know. Oh my God. Seriously. I know. My brother growing up, he worked at a fish market, and we would always be like, take all your things off at the door. You know what I mean? You got to get in the shower. You can't, like you stink.
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, so I really loved coffee. I was like, this is something that I get every day. I was getting it twice a day. So I'd get one on my way to work. And then, I would walk to Chelsea. That's where the design studio was. And then in the afternoon, I'd go to the local place and get whatever, like another coffee. I was like, this is cool. Like, I love this. I love like people who work there seem to really like it. I love how simple it is. It's like this one thing and then some pastries or whatever. But I also saw really an opportunity because at the time it was like Starbucks everywhere.
Yeah.
Which everyone hated. New Yorkers hated. At least the New Yorkers I was around. Because they were taking up every corner, buying up every other coffee shop. And then all of a sudden they're everywhere. And then there are like these mom and pop type places that weren't paying attention to coffee at all.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but like getting scrambled eggs from a steam wand. You know what I mean? Like that was a thing, and then they'd be like, then they'd make you a cappuccino. You're just like, that's gross. And so anyways, I saw an opportunity. I'm like, and also at the same time, the C market, the commodity market for coffee, which is where the coffee prices are based. In specialty coffee, we do C market plus whatever. So like $1.12 plus or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it still determines the price for farmers. And it was really low. It was, I don't know, in the 70 cents or something a pound. I also saw an opportunity there. I'm like, I'm going to commit to, it's 2001, so much has changed, but to fair trade and organic. So it was a really cool movement where it was like, it was like small farm holders who were part of a cooperative. And so I liked that, it wasn't just like a company or one person who owned and everyone else was doing the labor. Like they were all in it together collectively. And it was guaranteeing a minimum price of, I think it was $1.25 or something. So at the time I was like, well, that seems like kind of a lot, but like I'll commit to this and then we'll just adjust our prices accordingly. So I went out I didn't know anything about coffee roasting, but I wanted to make that product from the beginning, as close to the beginning as I could. So I went out to Idaho to this company called Diedrich, who makes coffee roasters. And they don't do that. I don't know if they do this anymore. Other places, I'm sure they do this. But at the time, they they had a seminar. You could like take a class with the owner who would tell you about, it's usually like coffee sourcing, like importers and
Yeah.
how do you choose coffee and stuff like that. And then how to roast, like different methods for roasting,
Do you
and
mind if I ask you a couple questions about that?
yeah.
So, are there different points in the process where you can actually buy can you buy the bean like directly from the farmer, or is it like you're buying the green beans and then some people buy the fully roasted beans? Like, where do you usually buy, like in one of your types of coffee shops, right? Where you're really thinking about coffee. At what point are you buying the bean?
Well, I was buying from an importer. That's how most roasters do. So there are importers that are based in the US, and being in New York was an advantage because there was a major importer in New York that I started with. So they were out, God, I think they were in Staten Island at the time. So I would go out to their lab, and they had a huge storage facility where I would go. I ended up reserving coffees and be like, well, I'm using a lot of this Brazil. And so I'd kind of do the math and be like, I'm going to need to reserve for the year about this much, and that's how I would buy it. But I would go weekly and pick up coffee from them.
Do you dictate how they roast, or like where
Oh,
you?
no, I roasted it. I would buy it raw. So coffee comes, it grows on a shrub and it's a cherry, like people say coffee is a fruit. So it's like this it's not particularly sweet. It's kind of tart. It's typically red skinned. And inside those beans, we call them beans, but they're really seeds. And they're like this. They're like back to back. So like that flat side, they kind of sit like this. And if it's a pea berry, it's just like this and it's a little more
so
rounded.
it's like the seed of
a fruit.
Wow.
Yeah, it's like kind of a big seed. It's mostly a seed. And then around it is like a thin layer. Well, there's like a silver skin that's around the bean. And then holding each bean together is like a parchment, like a thicker skin. And then around that is like a fruit. And then around that is a skin.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you see, like when people are talking about different processing methods, when they say processing, so like the cherries are picked, ideally when they're ripe, typically by hand. Some places they're picked mechanically, like Brazil does a lot of mechanical picking, and then everything's sorted with laser sort, whatever, so that you get ripe.
So you want the fruit to be ripe.
Yeah, certain like some of the best scoring coffees, they're picked at their peak ripeness.
Yeah.
It's hard to, this with ingredients, it's hard to correct something that's kind of messed up to start.
Yeah. Well, some things ripen better, like tomatoes sometimes ripen better. Like,
oh,
you
interesting.
Take them off a little bit, but yeah.
This goes through a whole processing method. Yeah, so it's not really, once it's picked, it's going through. So I like washed coffees mostly, and so that's
what's that mean?
It means like so that same day they take like. Say you're in Costa Rica and they're hand picking, they're putting them in these capuelas, these like buckets or baskets. And then they, at the end of the day, they're just like putting them down towards the bottom of the mountain or wherever that is where the trucks are. And then the trucks are taking them to the mill to take that skin off, wash off that fruit, and put them out on a drying bed or a drying patio. And then there's, then they rotate them and they stay out however long, and hopefully there's no rain. There's also some farms have dryers, which have, so there's all these different, there's all these quality assurance steps along that way, right? Where they've got someone measuring the moisture content.
What do they do with the fruit? Like with all the residual fruit that gets washed off?
It's a great question. Well, so there's a thing called cascara, which in Spanish means skin. And so that is, it sort of has like a plum taste to it. And so some people use that for tea because it's waste, and they would have to, at the farms, they would just put it, like larger firms, they can like put it back onto the farm, like, it just like falls into the soil. It's like compost. Yeah. But it also has like high acidity, right? So you always have to like balance all that kind of stuff. Ever since I've been in coffee, and even maybe more so now or still so now, people are always talking about like, how do you create more revenue streams or wealth for farmers, because they're, in the whole chain, they're the ones that
I'm sure
don't make out very well.
Especially if the price is almost like set for them,
Yeah. I mean, just like all that stuff that I described, that's like maybe like 25%. There's still so much more that happens there. Like they have lab technicians, they've got Q graders who are cupping, they have roasters on site at the very least, like make a sample roaster so they can roast and grade the coffee and see if there are defects or.
How much does weather impact the entirety of the crop, like an aggregate, like if there's like a rainy weather?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, there's kind of this new brand called Win. Have you seen it? It's RTD. This woman, she's from Brooklyn. It's like Nguyen.
Oh, I have seen it. Yeah. Somebody sent me like a gift box of it.
Oh, cool. Okay. So she's American. She's like, I think first generation Vietnamese. Her family's Vietnamese.
Yeah.
And so she's got this, she's buying from Vietnamese farms, coffee farms. I think they're mostly Robusta, which is, we've been talking about Arabica. Robusta is like what we used to think of with like Folgers and Maxwell House and that kind of stuff. It's like higher caffeine, doesn't taste as nice, but.
When you say it doesn't taste as nice, is it like more acidic? Is it just mellower, like not as flavorful? What's the difference in flavor?
I mean,
profile?
honestly, like my perception of it, I have cupped so little Robusta, it just never went across our tables. And even like El Salvador, the whole country bans the growing of Robusta.
Wow.
Because it gets into their they have like, they're really precious about their specialty coffee and, you get more money for it. And anyways,
yeah.
So anyways, it's a topic, like we could have a whole podcast on Robusta, but anyways, all that is to say is Vietnam, although I don't know, I think they just got hit really badly with some tropical stuff, but I think the Robusta grows lower and is more resilient to climate change. So that's a little bit of the pitch for it, and then they make it. I haven't even tried her product. I should.
Yeah, I had it I made a pour over with it. It was pretty good.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think she's doing all Robusta anymore, but yeah. So I'm not sure what you drank, but yeah. So anyways, climate is a huge, even within one country, even like a neighboring farm, like their microclimates.
Yeah.
So like one farm will be like, oh, I get a ton of rain every day at 2.
Yeah.
And the other farm that's just like, like within eyesight is like, oh, we have, it's pretty drier over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So climate is a huge factor.
It's so interesting, like how much has to happen before it even like you do it well at the coffee shop. When you have a good cup of coffee.
I know.
It's crazy. So like, obviously they have to, the agriculture has to be really good. They have to be good farmers. They have to, all these critical points along the way before they even like harvest it. Then they're cleaning it, washing off the fruit and drying it. And then after it's dried, is that then when it's shipped?
No, then it's stored. So they typically will keep it in the pergamino or parchment, that thicker skin, in bags and burlap bags. Usually, I think also plastic and burlap. I'm not sure. I think both, but in a climate-controlled warehouse, ideally.
To ferment or something? Why are they storing it? Why do they not just ship it right away after it's dried?
Oh, it's resting. It's part of the process. Yeah. So it's not fermenting. It shouldn't be if it was washed.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I don't know, just kind of coming into itself, I guess.
How long does that happen for?
I don't know. A couple weeks, maybe. I think that the cycle is somewhat short, but it is a step that happens. And it changes, like a fresh crop tastes different from at the end of the year, Yeah. Like, like before. I mean, honestly, like it's best if you can just always have fresh crop coffees. So, but it's just like logistically, it's difficult and it puts a lot of pressure on farms, I think.
It seems like there must be a lot of competition with all these coffee shops or coffee companies to who gets the best of the crops from the certain farmers. And
I don't think there's that much competition there.
Is there just enough supply where that's not an issue?
I mean, I guess maybe a farm that has like really high scoring coffee, say like their Cup of Excellence winners or some international award that people really recognize or Best in Panama or whatever. So they'll typically have some that are, so like specialty coffee score is from 80 to 100, 80 being the lowest. And a lot of the coffees that we drink are in the 80s, maybe high 80s if you're going to a good place.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they really start getting unique and special when you're in the 90s. And, you pay more for those coffees.
Yeah.
So something that scores is something that like won Best of Panama, and it was like a certain variety that everyone's excited about. I mean, they can go for like $100 a pound, $300 a pound.
Who drinks?
Yeah.
Like, where does that get? That's probably not even sold. It's just like
Well, that's funny you say that. Like some people, we would say that like roasters would just buy that for the prestige because they would get published of like,
mm-hmm.
this coffee roaster just bought the Best of Panama, whatever this crop and stuff. But I don't know, they just put it in small little packages and, sell it, and they'll do pour overs, be like a $12 pour over.
Yeah.
or more. I don't know. Yeah.
It would have to be more, right? Isn't there like almost an ounce? Or no, I guess it would be about a half ounce, like 24 grams in a cup of coffee, right? Something like that.
I guess so. That seems high. I've been doing a batch of like it's 10 cup. So it's really, I don't know, but it's 70 grams I weighed out.
Okay, so 7 grams. Okay,
yeah,
so
I haven't done a pour over in years.
You know what's funny? So I wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah.
I did pour over for like, for many, many years, up until like a year and a half, maybe like 2 years ago, because I was doing pour over of this counterculture bean that I was getting like subscription of up here in Westchester, because there's not a lot of coffee up here. And then a friend of mine sent me the same coffee bean in this thing called Cometeer.
Oh, yeah. It's frozen.
It's really fucking good.
Cool, yeah.
I was like, wait a sec, this doesn't make any sense. Like, why is this? It was like as good, if not better, than the pour over.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I made sure like the pour, like at the time, and I think you taught me how to do a pour over. You also taught me how to make cold brew, but like, it was like I made sure I did it the right way. And I was like, why this? I don't know what the process is of this Cometeer. I think they like bulk, cook it all like and they wouldn't reduce it. Maybe they just like cook it at a very high concentration and then freeze it right away or something. But it's really good.
I wonder.
I'm drinking it right now.
You are? That's so cool.
Now they have like all these, so I get like 4 different flavors a week.
That's cool.
And they have everything intelligent. They have all these brands like Red Bay and George Howell and like I never know what half of them are.
Wait, George Howell, you said?
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch.
Well, that makes a huge difference of who you're drinking. So, who are you drinking right now?
This one right here, I'll tell you this isn't the Onyx, but I'll try and pull it up real quick because because it's really good. Like, let's see here. So they give you like a mix of different roasts as well.
Uh-huh.
And now I have to like find the coffee's curated box. Here we go. I'm also curious how they do like how does a coffee become light versus medium versus dark, or is like what makes a strong cup of coffee? Like is that just the actual bean itself?
No, it's the way you roast it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Here, you'll appreciate this. This is my analogy. Like say someone gave you, have you ever baked bread?
Yeah.
So if someone gave you like this really beautiful grain, and you were going to make a loaf of bread with it, you would do it to a certain way, I would imagine, where you're like bringing out, so you could like actually taste that sweetness of that grain, right? And you're like, oh my God, like whatever would be a good one, amaranth, or I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I feel about coffee roasting. If you're paying like a lot of money, let's just say, I think it's like you start on you pay a lot of money. So when you get a really good quality green coffee, what do you do with it? You roast it light. You know what I mean? Or you just would never dark roast that.
Yeah.
Because you would lose all of that delicateness and sweetness and like all that. So I think my approach with coffee roasting has always been, and especially with Super Crown, was like just bringing out what's there.
Yeah.
It
depends on the bean, how you roast it.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So whenever I see dark roast, it's like, okay, that's fine. But that's like in mid 80s scoring coffee, low 80s scoring coffee. It's just like, just put milk and sugar in it. It's just like a different drink,
Yeah. So I'll read some of the brands so when they send it, it's always like they'll just pick 4 and send it to you. So they have house plant.
You can't choose. You can't be like, I always want this roaster.
Now they finally I'm in the beta for like choosing the ones you want. More so I choose the ones I didn't want.
Okay.
I mean, no offense, Joe Coffee. I'm not a big fan. But houseplant, intelligentsia, birch, bird rock, Square Mile, whatever that is, black and
That's
white.
England.
And then they have Clatch and something called Get, Gget.
Go get 'em,
Onyx.
Tiger. Yeah.
Go Get 'em,
Onyx.
Tiger. Yep. George Howell, Red Bay, Equator. So these are all the ones they have. I actually really like the houseplant. I think like Seth Rogen invested in it or something.
Houseplant.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay.
He's like the face of it. But it's called Houseplant. It's really good. Anyway, most of them are really good. They also counterculture. But they just send you 4 different boxes every week, and they're all mostly really good.
And how do they come? Are they like with freeze packs or?
The packaging is certainly not as eco-friendly as you'd like. It's a big box with a bunch of freezer packs, and then there's 4 8-packs of these pods.
Okay.
And they send that every week, so we get it every week.
And then you just pour hot water over it, and that's your cup of coffee?
I actually had a hot water tap installed in my kitchen.
Nice.
Just for this purpose. So I literally just, pour, it's at like 199 degrees or something. And like,
nice.
The pod like melts really quickly. So I just drop the pod in some hot water and then like pour it into a cup of hot water. That's it. It's basically just like concentrated frozen coffee, but it's really good.
I think they're brewing it. They must be brewing it like this Japanese method. I don't know. I have to like look on their website. It's not cold brew. Because you wouldn't get all that, like with cold brew, it sort of tastes like that method of cold brewing, but.
Unless they, you showed me this other, at Bark, we used the Gorilla Coffee cold brew. We made a concentrate of it.
Mm-hmm.
You gave us a recipe, which I think was like 8 gallons of water to 5 pounds of coffee. And I think that might have been it. I don't remember, to be honest with you, but we did like basically like 1/8 of the amount of water, and then we just used that concentrate in the milkshake.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah, that was so
really
good.
Yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
But then you showed us this other method, which was like there's basically like a pour over with ice in the.
Yeah, that's my favorite method, and I'm pretty sure that's what the Comitier is doing. It's called Japanese method, but you're adjusting your grind setting. So typically you grind a little bit finer than you would for drip. You adjust your dosing. You typically do a slightly more of a dose than you would for like a hot batch. But all these are all the things you just like dial in so that you're like, that's it. That's like what I want. And I've done it at home recently, but I've done it that's how we brew it at Gorilla, and same thing with Super Crown. But yeah, you brew it hot over ice. And so it kind of, when you make those adjustments for this type of method, you get all that nuance in the coffee, and then it's like stronger. So then you add ice and it like holds up, but it really, cold brew tastes to me, I think some people may agree with me, it tastes like the method of cold brew. Like you taste cold brew and you're like, that was a cold brew method.
Yeah.
First. And I just want to be like, what does this coffee taste like? Not what was that method?
Yeah,
Do you know
exactly.
what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
This show is brought to you by, you guessed it, Mies. Mies helps thousands of restaurants and food service businesses all over the world build profitable menus and scale their business successfully. If you're looking to organize your recipe IP and train your team to put out consistent product every day in less time than ever before, then Mies is just for you. And you can transform all those old Google Docs and Word docs and PDFs and spreadsheets and Google Sheets into dynamic, actionable recipes in Mies in lightning speed. Plus, stop all that manual work of processing invoices, because Mies will digitize all your purchases automatically. And there's a built-in database of ingredient yields, prep yields, and unit of measure conversions for every ingredient, which means you're going to get laser-accurate food costs in a fraction of the time. Visit www.getmeez.com. That's GETMEEZ.com to learn more. And check out the show notes moving forward, because we're going to be adding promotions and discount codes so that all of you lovely and brilliant Mies podcast listeners get a sweet deal on Mies. And some people make like iced coffee, which I guess they're just like making coffee and cooling it down. Is that?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I'm asking. You don't see like iced coffee on a menu. Like, is that what that means?
Well, I called this iced coffee for years, but it was this method. Yeah, there's a lot of dumb ways to do it that, you could just like, I mean, it's sort of like what people do at home. Whenever I visit my friends, they're just like, oh, well, that pot of coffee we're not using it anymore. So they just put it in the fridge. I'm like, well, that's been sitting out for like an hour and a half. So that's cool. It's just like caffeine delivery system.
So, we kind of get a sense of like this, when you have a
Mm.
really good cup of coffee, all the elements. I mean, we could probably talk about that for hours, like what
Yeah.
happens on the farm, and then while they're resting it, and as they're shipping it, there's probably a lot of other things. And but like, let's just say you just go to a bodega around the corner and you get a cup of coffee. What's that? What's happening
What
with
is
that?
it?
Yeah, what's happening with that cup of coffee? Like, how is that different?
What's up with that? I mean, they would just, if like those bodegas are buying from, like, let's talk about New York. So they're buying from, typically, I would imagine like one of the like old school roasters where they can give them, basically it's just a price game. Like, can you give me equipment? I'm going to be going through a lot. So like, oh yeah, great. We'll give you your brewer and we'll make sure to maintain it or whatever, or not, who knows?
Yeah.
And then they'll buy, they would call it specialty. So they're probably just buying like low 80s scoring coffee, roasted medium to dark, and that's the consistency. So it's like at the best, it's chocolatey.
Yeah. So they're buying already roasted beans and they're just probably already roasted and ground, and they're just kind of.
Yeah. Everyone if you're brewing coffee only, but the only roasters turn the coffee buy the green coffee and then roast it.
Yeah. So what does Starbucks do then? Like, what's they're
roasters.
But they don't roast in each store, so they have like centralized.
Oh no! They've got a huge facility in Seattle,
and they just sort of distribute from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're like roasting it and grinding it and sending it, right?
I don't think so. I think they're whole bean. Yeah, you've got to have a grinder. Yeah. I mean, I don't even know, man. Honestly, maybe they might have them in what's called frac packs, like fractional packs. I worked at Starbucks at Astor Place when I was writing my business plan for Gorilla.
I remember that.
I was like, I want to like learn as much as I can, because I was like, how do you even? And honestly, I was just like, how do you operate a coffee bar? You know what I mean? I was like, is there a manager, like key holder? Like, how do you handle cash? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know how that worked, and so I worked at the Astor Place one. So when I was there, it came in 5-pound bags, and you would weigh it out and grind it. But I'm sure now, just for consistency and ease and less training, you just have it in they grind it and put it in vacuum sealed bags.
What do you think like the typical scoring of a bean from Starbucks is?
80s, low 80s.
Low 80s too?
Well, it depends. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? They're roasting everything so dark. It's like, okay, I can't, how do you even like determine? Like, they've got notes on the bags of like, oh, citrus. I'm like, really?
Yeah. I can't drink Starbucks unless, and I won't, but if I'm stuck at an airport somewhere where that's all they have, it has to be like the light roast. Otherwise I just can't really drink it,
That's really funny. On road trips, if I'm lucky, I'll be like, oh yeah, there's a Dunkin' Donuts. But it's just like, they are so intense with the milk and sugar though. You're like, I just want one, you have to like really specify at Dunkin' Donuts, otherwise just like walk away, this sugary thing.
Yeah. I can't drink milk, so like I drink black coffee. Every once in a while I'll have some cream in there, but like.
Right.
Yeah, milk doesn't do so well for me.
Is that a new development?
It's funny, I'm 43 now. When I hit 30, I like developed this allergy to live yeast. And so I couldn't drink beer or wine or sake anymore. So I haven't had a beer in like 13 years. And then I did this like diet for like 6 months. And I shouldn't have done it for 6 months, and I shouldn't have done it all. But that's just kind of how I do things. And it was no sugar, no alcohol, no caffeine, no gluten, and no dairy. I felt amazing afterwards. And then I couldn't eat a lot of that stuff ever again. All of a sudden I had a gluten sensitive. I mean, I eat gluten, but not as much. And like I had dairy sensitivity, and
I don't know about the caffeine part, but those are all the things that people have problems with though.
Yeah.
Dairy, sugar, and sugar is a tough one.
Sugar's a real tough, because I love desserts.
Me too. Me too. I know. I love making, my new thing is like baking layer cakes. Oh, because I'm in Denver now. And it's like a mile high, so it's like a whole thing where that's like, I feel like I always like a little barrier to entry. It kind of gives the challenge a little more interest to me. And so I'm like, oh, how do I adjust my recipe for altitude so that my cakes don't sink,
Yeah. What are the typical adjustments you make?
Every single ingredient. It's
really?
Like you adjust the dry, you adjust the wet, you adjust the temperature and the time.
Wow.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, like Claude AI, like AI is great for this kind of thing, where I take like, because before I would sit down and I would do all the, and I'm like not a math person.
Yeah.
So I'm like making all the adjustments, and my last one, I just did this strawberry lemonade cake from the New York Times. It was amazing. Came out perfect the first time. So I'm psyched about that. But I took the recipe from the New York Times and then I took the adjustments from King Arthur and I put them into Claude. And I was like, make these adjustments for 5280 elevation. I know.
Oh, I gotta make
and
a
it
note
came
about
out
that. Wow.
and I was like, and I read through it and I'm like, that's amazing. So
I'm writing this down right now. It's such a really cool feature.
Claude is great for math.
Feature, adjust for elevation. I love that. So you worked at Starbucks to kind of like learn the coffee operation, and now you do a lot of consulting for a lot of these like types of brands. But like, I'm so curious. I've never run a coffee shop, but I obviously you go in, you see, these people are making coffee after coffee after coffee. It's a lot of like manufacturing process, but like online. I'm really just curious, like what's like the typical margin or EBITDA of a coffee shop when it's like decent? And what are like the most volatile or like variable aspects of the operation that you've seen people get like right or wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jace. Well, obviously, you make more margin if you are roasting the coffee. Like say you're buying the coffee at $3.50 a pound, and then you roast it, you lose 20%, whatever. There's packaging involved and labor, but versus 11, 12, and up a pound.
Oh wow, it's a big difference if you're buying it roasted.
And then you can sell bags of coffee. You could also do this as like so many coffee brands right now. That's why I'm like find this interesting. This is the challenge for me is like there's so many coffee companies out there. So it's like, how do you stand out? So anyways, there's companies that do private label. So like a larger roaster, even smaller roasters are just doing private label for like people who are like, hey, I really want to have a coffee company. I got someone who's like, oh, some of my friends have this thing that they need coffee for, and or they're like an influencer, and so you know what I mean, there's this like that's the world, right, where you can just like turn on a brand within a week and then you have a product, so but if like the traditional model is like roaster and then you do the retail, or you sell to someone who's doing the retail, or you're like you don't do retail at all, like Counterculture, which that was a really interesting move on their part. It's just like they're just doing wholesale. And they just do that wholesale game really well, so they just really focus on sourcing and roasting and packaging, and then they market too, within the specialty coffee.
They're the only brand that I remember in the restaurants. I remember Counterculture coming and training us on how to make the coffee.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, Intelligency would do that. All the companies would.
They do that now. You. Yeah, this was like maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, that was, and they were big in New York, They're based out of North Carolina, so they're kind of like East Coast brand. But yeah, and they had really good reps in New York, and that's where they really spend their money and focus. And they're a great company. Like they do transparency reports on how much they're paying for their coffee, and at the end of the year they always do like some roasters do that where they're just like, this is how much we paid.
Yeah. Are there like standardized, like this should be the food cost % of a cappuccino?
Oh, yeah, the markup is great. I actually put together a calculator I'm working with a coffee roaster in Reno for him to give to his wholesale accounts, let me pull it up.
Yeah, I'd love to see that. We have a lot of coffee shops as customers, and there's all these just putting not just the food recipes in there, but like all of the coffee recipes in there. And we haven't done much with it, but I bet there's a lot of similarities, if not exact same, of like the recipes for each.
So like here's an example.
Okay, so there's the green cost. So that's just basically buying the green bean,
right?
In the spreadsheet, and then.
Yeah, and so these are all these are hard coded in there. I'm just say paying $3.58 for the green coffee, and then if you lose 20% in roasting, which is it's typical, I just multiply it by 1.25, and that's what it is roasted. This is the cost of your bag. Here's your COGS, your markup.
Expensive bag. Whoa.
Oh my God. Oh, I know. Tell me about it. Well, that's like that's this. It's like if you're a smaller roaster, and you just, for 5-pound bags, prices for bags have gone up a lot since COVID.
Yeah. So 40 cents for a sticker.
But you make a lot, you know what I mean? Like the wholesale price is this and this is what your costs are.
Oh, so that's the wholesale price. Because what's like the typical cost of a cappuccino right now, or like a latte? It was like $4 or $5 on that.
So this is for the wholesale partners. Okay, so they're paying, yeah. So the cost of the coffee cost is, so for 8-ounce drip, and I've just gone through all this, like a latte.
Yeah. So this is for buying roasted beans.
Yes, yeah, for their partners. So, okay, the cost of your coffee, so in this case, the 8-ounce latte, it's 38 cents, based on $12 a pound. This is what your milk costs are, then your milk per drink.
Yep.
Your cost, lid cost, sleeve cost, syrup. Total cost is 67 cents. The markup is 3.5. And then the menu price. And I feel like these prices are on the low end, but that's good because then, but then you can, mark it up by 5. There you go.
That looks like you're around like a 28% food cost in general for those things. And then you have to factor in I'm just doing a couple of these right here, divided by 764. So yeah, they're all basically a 28.5% food cost. But then you have to have somebody to make that. So I would think you would consider the cost of the person making it as part of the cost of the cup of coffee, right?
Oh, do you? Yeah, I mean, geez.
I'm just thinking. And
then that's a really good point. And so that ties into like, what kind of equipment are you using? You know what I mean?
Are there coffee shops that use equipment to just make the whole thing?
There's a company that's pretty good. They're called Eversys. They do super automatic espresso machines. Yeah, and you have to maintain them and stay on top of them, right? But yeah, they'll make the consistent espresso.
Yeah.
They dial it in and all this stuff. You set all the parameters, they'll constantly adjust and whatever. So I had one of these at Superground. On
average, like, how many minutes do you think it takes to make a cappuccino? 2 minutes?
Less. Oh my God, less. If that's what you're making from start to finish.
Yes.
And assuming, assuming like you've got a busy bar and your like grinder's already, so in a manual way. Yeah, like your grinder's already like dialed in. So you're just like getting like Gorilla or Super Crown. Like they could make them really quickly as long as like it's all set up, right? And then throughout the day, you're adjusting your grinder. But for the most part, it's someone whose skill can just kind of, and then it's almost like, I always felt like the busier we were, the faster those drinks would come out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're just kind of in a flow of like pulling for 3 different drinks at a time.
Yeah. Yeah. But at least a minute, right? At least you would think at least a minute per.
Yeah.
Because even if you're paying a barista, like what, $15-$20 an hour, I would guess.
Yeah.
And then you got payroll taxes. So if it's 20, you're talking about $22 an hour.
Yeah.
And if it's 1 minute, that's already like 36 cents for that cup of coffee on top of the 28% food cost. So
wow, that's a really
that's a high cost for that cup of coffee.
Well, honestly, and
I mean high, like a very low margin, because
I'm really interested to see what the prices are. Yeah, in Denver, I feel like the prices are, I don't know, probably pretty low. There's some really good coffee companies here.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I don't know what's low, like $6 for a latte. But I think a friend of mine was in San Francisco, a coffee person, and they were just like, I think they said that like a 10-ounce, 12-ounce latte was something like, I don't know, $10 or something. Because I feel like the minimum wage is just really high there. And
it's linear, like every cup of coffee requires a person to make it unless you have a machine. And so, I guess they are also. No, they're not typically the person that's taking your order. It's usually somebody behind.
Someone else, yeah.
That's expensive.
Yeah, I think this is happening everywhere, right? This is like where we need to talk about where's the proper balance of like automation with people, for consistency. And I don't know, it's just like, COVID's really turned everything upside down, I think.
Where do coffee shops like are they making their margin on the drip? Or like on baked goods because there's no labor? Like,
oh man, the model, it's like in volume, really. It's like you just have to. It's a volume business, and so when you go into a coffee shop and there's no one in line and everyone's like on their laptops, you're like, that's not a healthy business. And then this is a little bit unfortunately, maybe like just times have changed. And so like a lot of people are getting into food. They're not really, I did that at Supercrown. I'm like, it was kind of like the Australian cafe. It was like exploding. And I'm like, I have to do egg sandwiches and toasts and stuff. And so I have to have a cook on staff. And well, while there's downtime, I'm going to have them do juices. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like the model is different. And so if you're in a busy spot, and then it's just like you're thinking about like your footprint, like you don't want a huge space, unless you have a different, I don't know. There's companies that you know this, like they're playing a different game. They're just trying to build market share at whatever cost to sell, and so they have this theatrical experience and whatever. They're not that busy, but they've got a beautiful space. I feel like this happens in LA and certain parts of California. You see it. Maybe New York. I'm excited to go back and see like where, it's been, I think 4 years. I was back maybe 4 years ago. So it'll be really interesting to see like really post-COVID, like what's going on here. The founder of Chipotle he opened a vegan concept, I think near the Flatiron.
He's a concept called Kernel. I had the friends who made me there. It was really good.
Interesting. Yeah. And so that's mostly robots.
Yeah. There's a coffee company called Blank Street that seems to be doing really well.
I know the operations person there, Wendy.
I know the CEO is in this like little group that I'm in, but been meaning to catch up. I sent him a note a couple times, but it seems like they're doing really well. And it seems like they're trying to, keep it like super simple and they're scaling. So that's like sort of, I guess, that low footprint and volume model. But, one of the problems with coffee shops, I imagine, is the day part problem, right? Like,
is the what?
The day parts, like you can't use, there's not a lot of business at night. So,
oh my God,
you got to make all your money, early morning. That's why I always think it's crazy when I see coffee shops that don't open till like 8:30 or something. Like, what are you doing?
Oh my God, yeah, I know.
I was at a place in San Francisco. I was staying in like the Chinatown area or just outside of Chinatown. And there was a really nice coffee shop a block or so from the hotel. And I went for a run in the morning and I got there at like 7:30 and they were closed. And I'm like, dude, people wake up early here, man. What are you doing?
It's crazy, man. I know. Yeah. I'm shocked in Denver a lot too, where I'm like, just a food place will be closed on a day. I'm like, why do you close on Sundays? You know what I mean? Like that's one of your heaviest volume days.
Yeah. You were talking a lot about, and I think I saw it on your website as well, sort of just a lot of what you're doing now isn't just the product of coffee or the operations, but also just like branding and positioning.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's like really what I'm doing. It's like, so the company's called Black Sheep. I kind of just came up with this name because I'm like, I feel like I've always been a black sheep. And the idea is like own your difference, like lean into it. Cause like that's kind of where you're special and where you're unique. And so everyone that I talk to, like, that's kind of the first thing that we talk about is like, okay, tell me about you and what you're doing. So I do everything from brand positioning, and then I work with partners who do graphic design, web stuff. They do all the graphic parts, but I'll basically do all the brand work beforehand. And I'll do competitive landscape analysis. So who are the top 10 competitors? Like if it's, if they're a regional coffee roaster, I'll be like, who are the top players in your region, and what are they doing? And I do a SWOT analysis, like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What's their value proposition? It seems it's really tedious process. And some people are kind of like, oh, I kind of know who my competitors are. I'm like, let me just do this. Cause like I have all these preconceived ideas before going into it, but then you always find out, like, you kind of cull all that information and you're like, well, here's an opportunity for you. Like these guys are all sort of saying this kind of stuff. And this is where your product is unique, where you can position yourself. For example, like it could be something as simple as like this company in Minnesota that I was talking to, like they roast with an air roaster.
What's that?
And it's like, I mean, it's just most
it's kind
people
of like air frying.
Air fryer? No. I don't know I don't even have an air fryer. It's just like a different method of roasting. So most do it in a drum, and it rotates and you're doing this profile. So air roasting, it's just a different method. It's like hot air that's blowing the coffee around, and then you control it in a different way. But it's a unique process. It's pretty rare. And I don't know, you get different types of coffee out of it,
I just
and
Googled it.
so,
Air roasted
yeah.
is coffee that is roasted on a fluid bed of hot air as opposed to the traditional method of tumbling in hot steel drum.
Oh, nice. Where'd you get that answer?
I
That's
just
correct.
Google.
Oh, is it AI's Google? Google's AI?
Yeah, which by the way is getting a lot better. The Google AI.
It's crazy though. But
Yeah.
don't you think, like, what is that going to do as a marketer? I'm like, what is that going to do for Google Ads? You know what I mean? Like,
it's
or
interesting
your search engine optimization, which has always been a pain point for everyone. Or like, how do I get better SEO results? And you're like, I don't know. Do you really even need to worry about it anymore? Because like, if you Google, you kind of look at the top result, which is an AI answer.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you're optimizing for. But if you look for, tell me the 10 best coffee roasters in my area, the AI might have an answer, but then how do you get in that top 10?
That's right. Yeah, you need a link.
That's probably an interesting thing to figure out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like ChatGPT, at least, and maybe Google does this, and I'm not sure, but they'll cite sources. So that's been really helpful. I think you might have to ask.
ChatGPT does that?
Yeah, you might have to ask, but I know sometimes when I'm looking for statistics or data, I will ask ChatGPT to like make sure you give me the source.
Yeah.
The source is not always right, by the way. So there's still work to do there.
Oh yeah, I know.
But it's pretty helpful in general.
That's cool. Anyways, like just differentiating, you know what I mean? It can be as simple as that, but just like kind of leading into that part of your differentiation, and then you just, validate things with like testimonials and stuff like that. And then, I don't know. So I work with people from all of that, from brand positioning. Sometimes that means like doing their logo or a brand refresh. I'm doing a brand refresh right now. This guy who's got this really cool product. It's a new type of coffee lid. He's an engineer, but he also happens to be a super taster. So and the super taster part of his experience wasn't on anything that he was talking about. And I'm like, if you're trying to reach its primary target, and also I was like, your primary target's like coffee roasters with multiple retail locations. That's your primary target. And then, and then you can get the like small, like independent single shop places, but you really need those folks to buy in because that's where they've got the staff, they've got the Q graders and all the people who care about the difference in this lid and how that sensory perception is better, how you get a better mouthfeel because of he changed a couple things with the hot lid and it's really interesting. But anyways, he was just like he's getting decent sales, but like not enough, and so we're doing a brand refresh, but also I'm like, that's like the other day he told me that he was a super taster. I'm like, that's amazing. And that's going to be part of your story. And super tasters are, I don't know, they're sort of like unicorns, it's like, and I asked him all these questions. I'm like, oh, you're sensitive to paper ink, like newspaper ink. And he's like, oh, yeah, I can't stand it. And like, you know what I mean? Like, so they're almost like they're super sensitive, but they really get the nuances.
That's amazing.
In coffee. Yeah, I know.
Does he deploy that sort of only towards coffee? Because that sounds like something that's universally, if you're just tasting any wine or food.
Yeah, it's everything, like he doesn't like spicy food. It's like you just get the nuances and stuff, which is great. And like, so a sommelier, for example, or like a Q grader in coffee, they're basically equivalents. Like you are trying to discern that nuance and to grade, and so like someone who's a super taster tends to be a very good cupper, coffee cupper, but like you're not going to want to go out to dinner with them to like a Mexican place because they're going to be like way too spicy.
That's like always something I've thought about for people that have like incredibly perceptive palates.
Yeah.
Is one, I wonder how enjoyable things are when you every little element. And then two, is it sort of a bias if you're trying to measure subjectively or objectively how good something is? Because if most people can't even taste what you're tasting, will they like it more or less because of that? And it becomes like this very skewed, evaluation of something if you have that like really, really, really intense like ability to perceive things.
I think it's good for, how do I say this? If I had a coffee company and a super taster came to my place, I would want them to really like my coffees. Like, oh, okay, like, you know what I mean? Like you're getting these nuances and I'm doing a great job. Like I'm bringing out the essence of what's here.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be too, well, I guess it could be maybe if it's like a natural that's like just looks exploding with like berry flavors or,
Yeah.
and that's interesting too. They might not like it because it tastes fermenty and stuff. But I think like having that, I don't know. Anyways, I think it's like a really interesting, he's actually a coffee geek and he's an engineer and he just happens to be a super taster. And so he's like improved the lid. So anyways, I love that. He's just like such a character.
I think that's such a smart way to go about brand building and differentiation, is just embracing the things that are your, whatever makes you unique. It's funny. I think about my kids all the time. Like I'm really adamant about, anything that is, whether it seems like a strength or a weakness, just like own it and like figure out how that becomes, even if it's a weakness, how does that become like what makes you you, and embrace it, as opposed to trying to hide it or like run away from it.
Yeah.
I think as
that's a really good point.
Humans, and maybe because of how parenting was or something, but like for a long time, that was never really a conversation. Like we often are like trying to like hide the things that are weaknesses, but in some scenario, a weakness is a strength in almost any, you know what I mean? At least in one place.
You know what? That's so funny. Like I even say that to my partner. She's like such a sensitive soul, and struggles with anxiety and depression and feels things like so extremely.
Yeah.
But like, I say to her, especially when she's down, I'm like, this is what makes you so great, is you get people, you're so sympathetic and you're empathic, and that's also your strength. Like you are so attuned, she's so in tune with how other people are feeling.
Yeah.
And she can see when someone's a little uncomfortable, like at a party or whatever, and she'll go over to them and talk to them or get them something. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I'm not like that, unfortunately. Like I'll just be talking.
Well, not unfortunately. It's
or whatever, you know what I mean? Yeah, whatever. That's my strength. And differences.
I just had that conversation in couples therapy last night with my wife, because she is that. She is like incredibly empathetic and feels so much, and there's so much beauty in that. And of course, it becomes really tough because that also creates anxiety and all the other things for herself. And I'm the opposite, where like I have like very little emotion, and it's there's a lot of downside to that. But then of course, as it relates to like being an entrepreneur or like building businesses, that becomes like this huge superpower, right? Because you just keep going, and there isn't like a
oh my god, it would be hard being an entrepreneur. It's hard to be a real sensitive soul, or, you know what I mean? You just have to like have this exterior of like, okay, next. Didn't work, next. You know what I mean? Like that was a huge screw up, next.
Yeah.
It'd be great if it was all victories, but
it's being an entrepreneur, I feel like is about 99 shit shows for every one, awesome thing. And you just gotta like, be okay with all the shit shows and things that go wrong, because it's the one, you gotta get one thing right every, every day or week or month or whatever it is. And not like go into deep, dark depression every time something goes wrong.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. And also like, I think framing it that way with her, it's like, it's okay that you feel so intense right now about this. It'll pass. And this is part of your superpower.
Yeah.
I think that's also part of the whole like depression cycle, right? It's like feeling this certain kind of way, like everything feels like so overwhelming. You're like, it'll pass.
Yeah.
And what you're feeling is valid. I'm sorry that you're feeling it so strongly. Like I should probably feel like you're not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a big unlock for me because I am terrible at like, I just am not great at like perceiving those emotions. And then I always want to fix things. I don't know if, obviously people are, some people are like that. And somebody told me something recently, I forget who, but when someone, especially if somebody is that sort of empath and they're depressed or feeling down, whatever the thing is, the best thing is actually just to be that with them and be there with them and not like, try to fix it for them, because, because then they feel like they're more alone, that they're
sounds like we're the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That's because I'm the same way. I think it's just like, I don't know. Maybe that's what makes us good entrepreneurs, or because we're like, oh, that's broken, fix it. Oh, well, how do we correct that? Oh, that person didn't show up. Like, let's call this person. We're always like troubleshooting. And so I only recently realized this, and it's like, I don't have to solve things.
Yeah.
It's not a problem to be solved, but just be like, that sucks that you're feeling that way. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And just like
Yeah.
be empathic and be like, you're not wrong. Like, that
Yeah.
sucks and it'll pass, but like, just turn off for the day. Like, you don't need to finish today. Just like chill out. I don't know, just go for a walk or whatever. But like, don't worry about anything.
I
Like, just
know.
feel it and get through it.
It's so hard too. And it also, I don't know about you, I'm like, why am I like in my mid 40s almost, and I'm only starting to figure out like, oh yeah, maybe I should I
Oh,
should
I
emotionally
know.
connect with people.
I don't know. I mean,
You
I
know,
think like, yeah, we're just always going to be learning, and I
yeah,
think like hopefully until the day I die, just like
yeah,
growing and getting better and learning. But yeah, I feel that. Same, like I never really went to therapy until recently, just around COVID, where I
yeah.
was just like, I was so depressed. I saw this therapist like on Zoom or whatever, and like first meeting, she was like, "You're an extrovert. No wonder you're depressed." And I'm like, "I am." you know, I like had no idea. I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." I was working remotely, and she was like, "Oh, that job's not right for you." I'm like, "Oh, the job's great. I will get out. I will be around people." But yeah, I think like COVID just like made me realize like, gosh, I get energy from people. I need to be around people, even if it's just a stupid little interaction at the grocery store.
Yeah.
It helps me. It like gives me some energy. But like, staying in day after day, just with one other person was not enough.
No, no. I don't think it's good for anybody.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Some people I feel like they were writing books and making movies. And I think
Yeah.
certain people are just like true introverts and they're like, no, I think, yeah, it'd be great. But
Yeah.
it's not me at all.
Well, this was awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. It was so great.
I can't believe it's been this long since we caught up. I don't remember how I think I saw you writing about something or talking about something on
Oh,
LinkedIn. I was like,
maybe
oh my
on
God,
LinkedIn or
Darleen.
whatever. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what's going on? Tell me about you. Like, tell me about Me's. Like, how's it going? It seems like you've raised a ton of money and you're building this cool company and lots of restaurants are using it. Like, tell me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love what I'm doing here. There's times I miss cooking, but I really love what we're building. And I realized that, I
Mm-hmm.
started looking for this tool when I was running Bark actually, and it didn't
Mm.
exist. And all I could find was like finance software. I'm like, why is there not like a tool for like the things we do in the kitchen? So I was like really excited to like get into this and build this. And it was obviously I had no idea what it was like to build software, but it spent a lot of time prior, like researching and learning. And yeah, we launched like 2021. It's been
Wow.
awesome. Like, I think, we're really blessed. Like we're selling to an industry that I love and that I've, spent my whole life in. So I'm
Yeah.
just like solving problems that I wanted to have solved. So it's fun. And we
That's
have like
cool.
30,000 somewhat kitchens and chefs
Oh,
using
wow.
the
That's
tool
amazing.
and
Yeah.
growing really fast. And yeah, we raised a bunch of cash, although like I'm not a big fan of raising money, but it's a necessity, especially when you are building technology and you want to like make sure you keep innovating.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good. We're doing some new things now with like helping chefs and mixologists and anybody with like how to get more value out of their like IP, their recipes. And then we created this network of all these shows and podcasts and blogs and things related to all the stuff we love about the industry. So it's been a lot of
Yeah.
fun and it's going really
That's
well. We
awesome.
just keep growing
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's interesting. It's all about growth in this in this space.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I've been trying to like work on is balancing the speed of growth with
Mm.
just being way more mindful of like all the like stuff we've already have out in the market that customers are using and making sure that we're like improving those things. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you raise capital for venture, you start this race that's basically as soon as you start raising from venture capital, they're like, okay, keep growing, keep tripling and do whatever you need to do
Mm-hmm.
to triple. And you can do that if you figure out the model. But at some point you're like, are you doing this so you can keep growing, or are you doing it so you can like, have this impact on the industry? And so
Mm.
that's been a something I've been thinking about a lot lately. But generally speaking, I love what we're building. It's awesome.
That's cool. Like, yeah, growing, like doing something totally different. Do you have an advisor or like who's helping you with the financial part of it?
I just had to learn all that, honestly. I mean, I have like,
Really?
I've like had a lot of help along the way. Prior to launching Me's, after Bark, I started this restaurant group called Orify Brands. I became the chief operating officer. That was not the plan, but they had, the CEOs, these guys, John and Andy, they used to own a bunch of Dunkin' Donuts actually and Subways. And then they
Hmm.
bought Five Guys in New York. And then we just started building brands, within that company. That's actually where I built Me's, and they funded the initial part of it.
Oh, cool.
And they were a huge help in just like starting to understand more of like unit economics and fundraising, at least at a sort of fundamental level, because they came from a very different, background than me. And I had never really interacted with people like that. And they were super smart. So they were very helpful in the beginning, as well as the CFO, this guy named Rob Garrett. And then along the way, I've had I've gotten really lucky with like really incredible investors, from all walks of life, like hospitality and other technology companies. And we have the co-founder of Instacart is one of our investors, and Bento Box and Superhuman, and
oh my God, that's amazing. Wow.
and growth folks like Lenny Wachitsky, like a lot of folks that just both are great for just like network and also just asking questions,
Yeah.
So I feel like that was something I learned with the restaurants is you got to find really like investors that, I mean, I had caring investors at Bark, but finding investors that actually really know a lot more than you about things that you have to make sure you get right.
Yeah. Wow. Honestly. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You think you'll have companies after this?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's like, I have to whisper that because my wife's like, dude, why do you keep starting more businesses? I'm like, because I love it. Like, I love this year. And now, to be honest with you, now I cooked for like 20 years. Like that's what I did was a cook. And I didn't know anything about like starting businesses.
But for other people, not at Bark. You didn't do that at Bark.
No, like cooking for mostly like in the fine dining world. Like I cooked at like high-end restaurants for a very long time. I didn't even think about what being an entrepreneur or starting businesses. And so I really didn't start learning about that until my mid 30s, late 30s.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. How old were you when you opened Bark? 30?
28. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I did Gorilla when I was 30. Yeah.
Yeah. And now like I've learned so much more about starting a business and understanding the TAM and understanding the importance of distribution and what's your go-to-market. Like there's so many things that like, that you want to make sure you ask yourself and you answer before you start a business, on top of just like making sure that you really love the thing that you're going to do. That like, I'm excited to keep doing it because, it's like anything. It's funny. It's like, I learned so much about cooking, like you did about coffee and branding. I, became an expert in this field of like cooking at a high level. And that was like 15 years of doing that.
Yeah.
And now I'm just doing the same thing in the entrepreneurial world. And it's just like, you just have, it's just time, like over the course of like hundreds and hundreds of like terrible mistakes and dumb decisions. And you just I think you just keep learning these things. So I'm excited for more businesses because
that's cool.
It's fun. What about you?
Same. Like, I really like what I'm doing now, like helping other people with their brands and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Like, there's always a part of me that like wants, and I think it'll just happen, if it's like a Me's for me, or you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's tool or if it's a particular product, but
you make such great brands though. I mean, like, it's so funny. Like, there's so many, just for example, coffee shops. How many do you actually remember? And, like with Gorilla and even with Supercrown, because I didn't get to interact with that a lot because I'd already moved, but I did a little bit. When you can evoke that feeling, like I remember, the feeling of being in that shop and the countertops, and when you started adding the new additions for them of like where the scales would be, and them doing the pour overs, and then it's the brand and like the bag. You knew the bag right away when you saw it with the Gorilla on it.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for you to create more companies too.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fun doing it now. Like I helped with someone with we call it a brand refresh, but it's a total rebrand. This guy that bought a roaster in Reno that had been around since 1990. Kept the name, but we're like, but he's got a pretty iconic brand right now. This is sort of like that. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a graphic designer, but like I do kind of like help with positioning, and like I feel like I'm like a creative director in a way. Is like, I'm very comfortable. I think like having worked with designers when I was a general manager, and like a lot of my friends are designers. So I just like kind of know how to talk to them in a way that they get and like kind of bring out this essence. And, in the end, like I feel very strongly that brand, especially with an independent company, the brand is like some reflection of that owner. It's bringing some essence out of that owner because they're the one that's behind it and that's helping them shape that vision, but it's around their kind of uniqueness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's like amazing that like this guy who's like his whole story has been he's an engineer that created a lid. And I'm like, you're a coffee geek who's a super taster and an engineer that created a lid. And so that makes even more sense. You know what 100%. I mean? But yeah, so I love that. And if I can do this for the rest of my life, maybe do something else also. But just helping folks kind of find that uniqueness and like how to dive into that more.
Yeah, I love that. I love that vantage considering how to build a brand. Well, thank you for
Oh my God. Yeah, thanks.
Today.
It was great catching up with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning into the Mies podcast. The music from the show is a remix of the song Art Mirror by an old friend, hip-hop artist, Fresh Daily. For show notes and more, visit getmees.com/podcast. That's GETMEEZ.com/podcast. If you enjoyed the show, I'd love it if you can share it with fellow entrepreneurs and culinary pros, and give us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. Keep innovating, don't settle, make today a little bit better than yesterday, and remember, it's impossible for us to learn what we think we already know. See you next time.